Galaxy S20 Ultra Camera Review. Hello my dear friends, how are you? I hope you are well and in good health. Today I have a new and important video with you, which is a review of the Galaxy S20 Ultra phone camera. Galaxy S20 Ultra Camera Review. I hope you like it, but before you watch the video, subscribe to the channel to receive everything new and useful. Now let's continue the explanation. Unlike competitors, the Galaxy S20 Ultra integrates 108MP, 12000 by 9000, as one of the resolutions in auto mode, so users can set it as the default maximum resolution. It's really interesting because it's the first time we'll be using the full resolution of the sensor in our testing. Other phones treat the maximum resolution, 40/48/64/108MP, as a special mode that users have to switch to, making it much less likely to be used. By default, it works at 1/4 resolution, which ranges from 10 to 27MP. Main camera specifications plus what's new: rear camera system, 3 cameras plus TOF sensor, ultra wide, 13mm 12MP f/2.2 ultra wide primary, 25mm, 108MP, f/1.8 aperture, primary, zoom, 103mm 48MP f/3.5 long zoom. The Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra represents a major step up in the Samsung Galaxy S's camera hardware setup. The Galaxy S10 and Note 10's primary camera was the final evolution of the Galaxy S9, which was a derivative of the Galaxy S8's camera but with a much better lens. The primary sensor is about 3x larger than the Galaxy S10, and we estimate that the lens collects 2x more light. Only the recently reviewed Mi Note 10 camera features such a sensor, likely because it's the same one, designed and built by Samsung, the Samsung S5K HMX. Samsung hasn't confirmed this, but it's the only one that matches. The S20 Ultra comes with a new long zoom, 80mm plus, with a 35mm equivalent focal length of 91mm. This isn't the craziest we've seen. The Huawei P30 Pro's camera has a 135mm zoom lens, but for zoom enthusiasts, 91mm is a significant increase from last year's 52mm. The 12MP ultra-wide camera retains the 13mm lens, but despite the drop in resolution from 16MP to 12MP, the sensor size has increased by almost 50% since the Galaxy S10/Note 10. You can find more detailed camera specifications and general technical data on the Galaxy S20 Ultra specifications page. Image quality analysis important. Let's clarify some of the terms we will use. Image processing, software work that improves the quality of image data. Image filtering, a software action that changes the style, aesthetic, of an image. Context image, a great approximation of what we see, including how dark the scene actually is, just to provide context for the snapshot. Not a quality standard. A note about camera IQ. Our camera recording system is based on 4 pillars or subgrades that provide much needed nuance: day, night, zoom and ultra wide. Photography in daylight. Daylight photography is one of the areas most affected by the introduction of Samsung's 108MP image sensor, especially since 108MP is available as one of the resolutions in auto mode, which is the mode that almost everyone uses all the time. We will use the garden scene several times to illustrate different things because it contains many of the things we need to compare daylight images to. We'll show you how the S20 Ultra performs with the best camera in daylight, the Mate 30 Pro. Out of the box, both phones capture a very good representation of the scene, with the Huawei Mate 30 Pro excelling in HDR photography. This is most evident in the bottom left of the image, where things are a bit dark on the S20 Pro, but well exposed on the Mate 30 Pro. Looking at the level of detail is the exact opposite of a camera having the feature. The 108MP Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra captures stunning detail. It's not a gimmick and allows users to crop and reframe more freely than ever before. The 108MP Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra captures stunning detail filming in broad daylight. The S20 Ultra and Mate 30 Pro stand out from the rest of the competition, for very different reasons. If you really want great exposure and HDR, the Mate 30 Pro will do just fine. If you prefer to capture stunning detail, The Galaxy S20 Ultra is the camera of choice, but with poor HDR performance. Obviously we'd like to have the best detail and the best HDR in the same camera, but that's not available today. Night photography. In this section, we will mention the term lux several times. It's basically a unit used to measure brightness, and you can find out more on our What is Lux page. A full moon night is 0.3 lux. Twilight is 10 lux and office lighting is 300 lux for example. The scene type below is a challenge for any camera because it has colors, highlights, contrast, and well shaded areas in the same view. You can see how the Huawei Mate 30 Pro and Mi Note 10 significantly adjust the overall color and brightness, contrast of the scene. The change in color tone is annoying for most users, and the loss of shade, contrast information due to image filtering is usually unrecoverable. Always remember that brightness is not always the best when it comes to night photography. Meanwhile, the Galaxy S20 Ultra and iPhone 11 Pro do a better job of capturing color hues that are closer to the original scene. Both phones will need to boost color saturation by about 15% to get as close to the original scene as possible, but this is a very easy adjustment on the phone. Below, you can once again see how well the phones capture the color gradations and overall brightness, contrast of the scene. However, the iPhone 11 Pro's image is noisier than the Galaxy S20 Ultra's, and a lot of details are lost as well. Part of the wires disappear, and even the word street has become unreadable on the iPhone 11 Pro. Galaxy S20 Ultra camera totally dominates iPhone 11 Pro at night. Even the gutter on the house behind is partially gone, as are the siding details of the house on the left. The Galaxy S20 Ultra's camera absolutely dominates the iPhone 11 Pro at night. The comparison with the Mate 30 Pro shows Huawei's strong noise filtering, causing a slight loss of texture in the yellow house. However, because the Mate 30 Pro lights everything up and takes photos at a high ISO, extra detail and texture are revealed on the brown house at the back. The Galaxy S20 Ultra has a slight advantage when it comes to resolution, so if you reframe or crop the image, it can make a noticeable difference. The Xiaomi Mi Note 10 has a similar strategy to the Mate 30 Pro with the backlight and manages to capture a slightly higher level of detail than the S20 Ultra. However, the white street sign is a reminder that more fine-tuning is needed in the color department. No HDR shooting. 0.5 lux, in soft lighting, with no harsh lighting, the Galaxy S20 Ultra's camera performs very well and captures realistic colors and moods. In the colorful bottle scene, the Galaxy S20 Ultra better captured the mood and original lighting of the scene. Compared to the Huawei Mate 30 Pro and Mi Note 10, the two best Android cameras previously tested. We've added the iPhone 11 Pro for reference as well. The Mate 30 Pro changes colors dramatically, turning orange and contrasting. In the background, you can see the noise pattern, which looks a bit blocky as well. The Mi Note 10 captures great detail, actually slightly better than the Galaxy S20 Pro, but it also alters the original highlights and tones to output a good quality image, but with a loss of control for the photographer. The iPhone 11 Pro has a hard time keeping up. Note that we took this photo without the ultra-long exposure mode, to compare apples to apples, no pun intended. Obviously, these Android phones also have such modes, but this is more of a technical issue than an image quality issue. However, the noise on the iPhone Pro 11 is very noticeable, and colors are more muted than they should be. From a camera standpoint, this will be a long spring and summer for Apple users, before the next iPhone debuts in late September. Cropped images will provide additional insights. Both the Mate 30 Pro and Galaxy S20 Ultra can capture great detail, but given some of the Chinese characters, the S20 Ultra's photos preserve small details a little better, while the Mate 30 Pro's sharpening filter makes some unreadable. The S20 Ultra's noise pattern is also more subtle, and some details, such as the green bottle outline on the back, are clearer and more natural looking on a Samsung phone. The Mi Note 10 comparison is more controversial, as it uses the same 108MP sensor as the Ultra, but different image processing and filtering strategies. In this roundup, the Mi Note 10 has a slight advantage with finer details, perhaps for two reasons. It probably combines fewer images during multi-frame noise reduction. Depending on the quality of tire realignment, things can get a little murky. Its image filtering is not as strong as the S20 Ultra. If you look at the small letters on the red bottle, you can see that the Samsung camera's contrast filter makes the letters slightly larger with a halo ring around them. However, pixel expansion and color filtering can destroy very fine details. The Galaxy S20 Ultra outperforms the Xiaomi Mi Note 10 in overall scene photography, colors plus mood plus details. At close range, the Mi Note 10 gets slightly better details that can make a difference depending on the texture of the subject. If you don't need to crop or zoom, the Galaxy S20 Ultra has much better control because the image is closer to what you see. You can see how the Huawei Mate 30 Pro and Mi Note 10 significantly adjust the overall color and brightness, contrast of the scene. The change in color tone is annoying for most users, and the loss of shade, contrast information due to image filtering is usually unrecoverable. Always remember that brightness is not always the best when it comes to night photography. Meanwhile, the Galaxy S20 Ultra and iPhone 11 Pro do a better job of capturing color hues that are closer to the original scene. Both phones will need to boost color saturation by about 15% to get as close to the original scene as possible, but that's a bit of a stretch. The comparison with the iPhone 11 Pro speaks for itself. The S20 Ultra's vastly superior hardware is disconcerting for the 11 Pro, which has difficulty picking up things like the thin wire connection on the blue bottle and the small details of the medallion and elsewhere. Night vision, -0.05 lux. If we lower the brightness to 0.05 lux, equivalent to moonlight, the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra will take a very dark, lifelike photo. That's what you see, but in this case, it's debatable. The user's intent is. Interestingly, the S20 Ultra is, in theory, capable of taking better night vision photos, so it's likely Samsung's adjustment option is not to go beyond ISO 3000, even if the sensor is capable of at least ISO 3000. 19602, as shown on Mi Note 10. In this night vision game, the Mate 30 Pro remains the champion, retaining great detail in near total darkness. We suspect that this type of situation is still relatively uncommon in the real world, but this possibility contributes to our night photography result. 12 or 108 megapixel at night? And since Galaxy S20 Ultra users can choose both, what's the difference? Below is a good example of how different they can look, and it's no different for night photography. Things are less pixelated if you crop them, but perceptually, they're quite similar. And since 108MP photos take up about twice the storage space, users can decide if the small difference in quality is worth the extra space. Perhaps the answer to that is the 27MP option. Night photography conclusion. The Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra's night photography performance is the best overall because it can capture the authentic colors, details, and mood of the scene, giving the photographer a greater amount of control and ultimately more creative options with night shots. Samsung reclaims the night photography crown. If users want a pattern to filter the colors of Huawei or Xiaomi photos, that can be perfectly achieved using the S20 Ultra photos as a starting point. The opposite is not true. Samsung has regained the title of night photography from a camera benchmark standpoint. Samsung was supposed to have a night vision mode, just like the Mi Note 10. The hardware can make that happen, so it ultimately becomes a choice the company has to make, but it would have helped rank higher with the camera IQ score. We've got ultra-wide photography. The Galaxy S20 Ultra has a focal length of 13mm, so it's one of the more extreme versions of the camera. The iPhone 11 Pro is 14mm, the Mi Note 10 is 16mm, and the Mate 30 Pro has an 18mm lens. As we compare the image quality, IQ, aspect of these cameras, keep in mind that they capture very different fields of view. The S20 Ultra hardware is upgraded from the Galaxy Note 10, and the S20U features a sensor that we estimate is approximately 60% larger, with a lens that can collect 50% more light. The number of pixels has dropped from 16 million to 12 million. But each of the 12 megapixels in the S20 Ultra camera is 40% larger. Daylight photography. Thanks to the camera hardware upgrade, the Galaxy S20 Ultra takes slightly better photos than the Galaxy Note 10 Plus S ultra-wide camera. with an increase in detail. They both capture acceptable and vibrant colors, but there are differences between the two. We can use a garden scene to illustrate the following. Both phones capture the scene very well, with vibrant colors and excellent preservation of the scene's mood, lighting, and brightness. There are slight differences in contrast and saturation, but they are both great ultra-wide cameras. We point out that the S20 Ultra has better detail on the outer edge of the image, but in the middle, which is usually the lens's sweet spot, detail and texture are comparable to the Galaxy Note 10, Galaxy S10 Plus. The rocks are located in the lower left part of the scene. The Galaxy S20 Ultra also uses a lot more image filtering than the Galaxy Note 10, and not always with a better result. The cropped image below shows a similar level of detail in the center. The S20 Ultra's extra filtration adds white artifacts by artificially boosting natural white light. It makes the image noisier and less natural looking. Below, a comparison with the Mate 30 Pro's ultra-wide camera shows how good the Mate 30 Pro is at capturing HDR. The Galaxy S20's dynamic range is not wide enough to capture small details in dark areas, details that we can see with the naked eye. Note that detail resolution is not 100% relevant because the Mate 30 Pro has a much narrower field of view, 18mm versus 13mm. The main point is the fact that it can capture what is in these shaded areas. Finally, we took a photo of a poster hanging on our office wall to show you even more of the differences. Brightness is 120 lux, and an image comparison shows how the Galaxy S20 Ultra has better noise reduction, but also how the additional contrast filtering makes image lighting look a bit harsher. Ultra-wide low-light ultra-wide night photography is difficult because ultra-wide cameras suffer from vignetting more than regular portable cameras. Vignetting means that more light reaches the center of the sensor and fades away from that center, making it difficult to capture image data. This is usually not a big problem when taking photos in daylight since there is plenty of light available. Color aside, the Galaxy S20 Ultra's ultra-wide camera looks equivalent to the Galaxy Note 10's ultra-wide camera when it comes to the overall level of detail. The color capture is clearly more realistic than the 2019 S10 series, which is great in terms of controllability. You can see the iPhone 11 Pro's camera struggling to capture light in general, but especially away from the center of the image. Not only is it darker, some detail is clearly gone, and that's not even looking at 1:1 scale. Finally, the Mate 30 Pro is another win altogether. Going from 13mm, Samsung, to 18mm, Huawei, in focal length makes a big visual difference with the Mate looking less ultra-wide than the S20's camera. But we're focusing on image quality here, and the Mate 30 Pro's camera does an excellent job of detail and texture. Colors are accurate enough to be editable to look natural, and contrast is maintained well, too. Let's take a look at the cropped images to see what kind of difference in detail and noise between these different phones. Here's our reference shot, so you know what we're looking at. The differences between the Galaxy Note 10 and the S20 Ultra, ultra-wide, are becoming more apparent, and it's a great example of why cropped images are important. Not only are the S20 Ultra's colors more accurate, but the noise level is visibly lower, and things like text are more readable. Just look at how the word Potrero is smeared on the Note 10, but readable on the S20 Ultra. The iPhone 11 Pro's ultra-wide camera has a hard time in low light conditions, and it's far from the weakest camera we've tested. Lots of room for improvement. The Mate 30 Pro camera may not be as wide, but that's partly why it's able to capture more detail of a given area. Its camera contains a huge sensor, equivalent in size to the primary camera sensor of the same phone, and the image quality is first class. Having narrower fields of view helps, but even if we compare the same pixel area, it will win. Super photography finale. The Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra ultra-wide camera brings incremental improvements over the Galaxy Note 10 to strengthen Samsung's position in this space. Noise reduction helps support image quality, but some additional processing may be more muted during daylight photography. Zoom photography. Long zoom photography or high-powered telephoto lenses was the talk of the town in 2019, with OEMs like Huawei, Oppo or Xiaomi leading the charge. But with the Galaxy S20 Ultra camera, Samsung is entering this arena with a huge upgrade from the S10 series. The scene below is a great example of the performance of macro opticals because it is very difficult to make text readable if you don't capture enough data. We'll compare the Samsung Galaxy S20 zoom with the Huawei P30 Pro, which was the best zoom camera we've tested. The images below have been cropped to show detail even on tablets and mobile phones. Don't pay attention to any differences in brightness between images, as they can be easily corrected. Both cameras capture very good color tones and make good use of sharpness, although there are some visible ringing artifacts, but within reasonable limits. The big difference here is that the Galaxy S20 Ultra is noticeably more readable than the Huawei P30 Pro, and that's saying something because the P30 has a very powerful zoom camera. Samsung's combination of sensors and optics, electro-optical, is powerful enough to take on and surpass the Huawei P30 Pro zoom camera. The text is interesting, but even zooming in on something that doesn't need to be readable reveals the difference in levels of detail. For example, the scene below, above, if you look carefully, you can spot places where the Huawei P30 Pro is starting to lose some colors, such as the building behind the clock tower on the left. The windows should be blue, which is a bit overdone on the S20 Ultra, but fades a bit on the P30 Pro. The side-by-side size is a good example of the difference in detail and color in these extreme conditions. Both detail and texture are noticeably better in the S20 Ultra crop. Also, the beige building in the lower half has blue windows, which the S20 Ultra picks up surprisingly well, but the P30 Pro zoom camera loses a lot of them. Zoom into the conclusion. Going into this camera review, we weren't sure what to expect. Looking casually at the 35mm equivalent focal length would suggest that the Huawei P30 Pro would have an advantage. But a closer look at the devices shows that the entire Samsung camera is quite capable, which is confirmed by image analysis. Its actual focal length is 19mm, versus about 14.5mm for the P30 Pro. And we estimate that its optics can collect about 30% more light than Huawei's optics. The Samsung sensor is also much larger, and although there's plenty of light available, the difference between 8MP, P30 Pro, and 12MP, S20 Ultra, images affects how fine details appear. Miscellaneous. This review is dedicated to the camera's image quality, IQ. But we received a lot of questions about things more related to the camera's ease of use, like autofocus, performance, and things like that don't directly affect the camera's IQ. Most cases. We'll go over some of these in our upcoming S20 Ultra review, but the quick answer is that we've seen that autofocus speed isn't as excellent as it used to be, but it's not as dramatic as we need to warn people against. It didn't even appear as an issue on our radar during our initial testing of the camera. At the moment, we haven't seen real-life situations where autofocus was getting in the way of taking photos. But in synthetic tests, we saw it lock in until the camera moved slightly. The shutter lag for low-light photos is certainly slower than in previous generations, and this would add more friction to the user experience, in our opinion. At the end of the video, I hope you liked it, and see you in a new video.